That's why you're going to die alone. Women over 25 have hit the wall. Good luck having nobody to keep you company in your old age but your cats. Today, we're going to talk about the stupid things that men say to and about women and why they actually say these things. And it's not for the reason that you think. So, I'm expanding on this video because I posted a reel on my Instagram page a few days ago that is taking off, and the comments are full of women who are like, yes, thank you, because they hadn't really heard anybody like break this down in the way that I broke it down. And I just wanted to help disillusion women, because what happens is these men, men in real life, in social media, wherever, they are constantly saying things like this to women to basically make women feel afraid, or make women feel less than, make women feel like, they're making a mistake in not, partnering with men or remaining single, practicing celibacy. And we're going to start seeing this a lot more in the coming years, because women are waking up. Women are, decentering men in all aspects of their lives. They are focusing on themselves, they're healing, they're evolving. They are prioritizing their relationships with the women in their lives and with their children. And it has men extremely scared. And so when men say things like this to women, what they're doing is they are projecting. All of these things are projections. And the reason why they are projections is because men's greatest fear is obsolescence. It's being completely useless and unneeded. And so when they say things like, nobody's going to want you, what they're really saying is, I'm afraid that no one is going to want me. And they're projecting this onto you because it's a mechanism for controlling your behavior. So, like I said, women are waking up, women are divesting and decentering from men and romantic relationships, or romantic hetero relationships. And the trend is, so intense and so heavy right now that it just has men running scared. And this is why they're starting to come out and say all of these things. So when I say men's greatest fear is obsolescence, you need to understand that men's fear of obsolescence is essentially the foundation of patriarchy. That is why patriarchy exists. It's because of men's existential fear of uselessness, their existential fear of having no inherent value, or there being no need for their existence. And so patriarchy, what they did, the original patriarchs, when they started attacking the matriarchal civilizations and communities and subverting all of the cultural norms that were rooted in nature, rooted in community, rooted in woman-centeredness and child-centeredness. They took all of these things and they flipped it on its head to position themselves at the top, to position themselves as, being in the seat of power or the seat of authority, to give themselves artificial importance. Because matriarchal civilizations have always been woman focused. And the reason why matriarchal cultures are woman focused is because the woman is the creator. She is the creator. She has the most direct connection to the divine. She is the embodiment of the divine feminine frequency. She is the person who brings forth life and cares for and nurtures children. And in the matriarchal cultures and civilizations, it was the women who worked communally to care for children, and men were always kind of existing on the periphery. And when I say on the periphery, what I mean is that they, in some cultures, could assist in child rearing and in childcare and things like that, but they were not seen as the most important part of society the way that they are seen as the most important part of society in patriarchy. And so when the original patriarchs destroyed the matriarchal civilizations, they gave themselves this entirely artificial system that grants them unearned importance and also unearned access to women and children. Because patriarchy, I like to say that patriarchy is a sexual welfare program for men, because it gives men unearned access to women. It completely subverts and destroys the natural sex selection process. In nature, across all animal species, it is the females who decide which males get access to them for the purposes of reproduction. And at a more fundamental level, passing along genetics. It's all about the passing of genes, the passing of genetics. Hold on, my phone is, I'm gonna put that on silent. Okay. It's all about, mate selection is about passing along genetics at its most core, core level. And so with patriarchy, what they realized is that under matriarchal civilizations or woman-centric societies, men had to earn access to women. And if a man did not prove himself worthy of having access to a woman, his genetics would not get passed along, which is exactly what happens in all other animal species. The weakest males, or the males with subpar genetics, or who are not the strongest or the fittest, depending on the species, they don't get to mate. Only the most attractive, viable males get to mate in nature. And when men started realizing that they wouldn't be able to have access to women, this is one of the things that fueled the creation of patriarchy. There's so many components to what fueled the creation of patriarchy, which I could get into in another video, but this is one of the main things. It was to completely subvert the natural sex selection process. And so these men, they're going through, like the men of today who are coming into comment sections and attacking women and giving these projections of you're going to die alone. Or one of the things that inspired that reel that I made was a man was in my comments, and he's come into my comments a lot. Like previously he had said that women are the creators of life, but men are the liberators of women. And I was just like, what? And so I asked him in the comments, I said, how exactly does the creation liberate its creator? And he didn't have an adequate answer for that. But one of the things that he did say in some of the subsequent posts, because the women were eating him up in the comments, one of the things that he did say was that women cannot evolve without men. And all of these things, the men are the liberators of women. Women cannot evolve without men. Those are projections. Those are their deep-seated internal existential fears being projected onto women to sort of flip the perspective of women so that we give them much more importance than they actually have earned or naturally possess. And so I made that reel just to sort of set the record straight, because I'm just really tired of men coming into my comments and saying things like that. And a lot of women don't understand, because these phrases, these turns of phrase that a lot of these men are using, it's working on some women, because a lot of women who are still indoctrinated by patriarchal ideals, who are still more male-centered in their thinking, even if they are working on deconstructing their male-centeredness, there are still a lot of trigger points for a lot of women who are in that process of deconstructing patriarchy from their lives and from their mentalities. And so when women hear things like, you're going to die alone, this is this fear that is still instilled in women, because they don't see themselves as sovereign. They don't see themselves as powerful. They don't see themselves as having value outside of their connection to or relationship with men. Those types of women, these tactics work on them. That it makes them settle for men that they wouldn't otherwise be with, or it makes them lower their standards. It makes them more open and susceptible to engaging with men who otherwise wouldn't have access to them, because these women are being driven by a fear of loneliness, or they're being driven by a fear of not being chosen, or that they're going to die alone. And the whole concept of dying alone is so silly, because women are naturally communal people. Like, we're naturally communal creatures. It's literally ingrained in our biology. And that's one of the beautiful things about matriarchy, is that matriarchies are communal civilizations. And so even today, statistically, women have really strong relationships. Like, women are very good at building and nurturing their relationships outside of romance with men, unless of course these women are heavily male-centered or male-identified. We're talking about, the girlfriend who, as soon as she meets a guy and gets a boyfriend, she just completely drops all of her friends. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about women who, even when they're in relationships, still have solid female relationships around them. So when you look at the statistics of, nursing homes and care centers and things like that, it's typically men who are much less likely, much less likely to have their children visit them or have friends come and visit them. These are, these men are the ones that are dying alone in hospices, in care centers, and retirement homes, and so on and so forth. Whereas women typically will be surrounded by children, or they'll be surrounded by loved ones. They are much more likely to have a community around them as they go into old age. And we're also seeing this reflected in some of the, younger demographics of women, where women are starting to buy homes together and land, and they're starting, like, single mothers are linking up and sharing in childcare responsibilities and things like that. Like, we are embodying this return to matriarchal practices that were stolen from us by patriarchy. And so I just want to be clear that if you are dating a man, if you're related to a man, if you're having a conversation with a man where he says things like this to you, or implies things like, well, this is why you're going to die alone, or you're going to get old, or you're over the wall, or you've hit the wall, as the red pillar manosphere guys say, which, by the way, I want to touch on that for a second. Because this whole idea that women hit the wall or lose attractiveness as they age, or lose vitality as they age, is not only just from a personal standpoint, not something that, like, anecdotal, it's not something that I see reflected, but even studies and, like, scientific studies are coming out and refuting this idea. For the longest time, it's been thought that a woman's eggs will dry up, or a woman's eggs will lose vitality, but a man can impregnate a woman well into old age. Therefore, a man's semen or sperm is more valuable than a woman's eggs, or doesn't lose life force or vitality in the way that a woman's eggs do. But scientific studies have proven, and there's been a lot that's been coming out about this in recent months, that the inverse is actually correct, which is, again, the nature of patriarchy. Patriarchy is an inversion of nature. It is women's eggs that stay viable and healthy and vibrant long into a woman's menopausal age, whereas it is men's semen, their sperm, that deteriorates as they age. It's their sperm that loses vitality. The older a man gets, the more likely the more likely a child is to be born with genetic disorders, or things such as autism, any types of anomalies or disorders of development. Those typically come through the male. Those come through the Y chromosome, because the Y chromosome is degenerated. It is a degenerating chromosome. It's actually a degenerating X chromosome, which I'm going to get into that in another video. But men are essentially mutations of women. And I had a woman in my comments, challenge me about that when I made that post, because I talked about subpar genetics and men, operating from a degraded Y chromosome. And she was like, well, isn't that bigoted to say this about men? I was like, no, this is science. This is science. This isn't bigoted to speak this way. I said, it's not bigotry, it's biology. And it's interesting because women like her, they don't know this. They don't know what the Y chromosome is. Most men don't know what the Y chromosome is. But the Y chromosome is actually a degraded X chromosome. This is why all human beings start out as female in the womb, and it's the SRY gene that's carried by the male that can trigger a mutation, which causes a female baby to mutate into what will become a male. And so, again, it goes back to everything that men do, everything that they say in the grand scheme of patriarchy is a projection. It is their internal insecurities that they have not reconciled with, that they are projecting outward onto the women as a means of controlling women. This is why they do that. This is not about telling the truth or saying it like it is, because it's a lie. They're saying these things to condition you and to scare you and fearmonger you into giving men access that they didn't otherwise earn. And what's beautiful about this time that we're experiencing right now is nature is correcting itself. We are returning to the place where female sex selection is prioritized, and it is fully in the control of women, at least in the West. Obviously, there are places around the world that are not, as advanced in terms of, women having access and women like reclaiming their autonomy and their sovereignty. There are still some countries in this world, many countries to be honest, where women and girls are still heavily subjugated by men. But that is something that is going to shift and evolve in the coming decades. And I'm very, very excited about that. And so I wanted to come on here and share this with you because if you are still feeling triggered or scared or upset when men talk about you getting older, or, you know, they talk about genetics, they talk about your eggs, they talk about, you know, you're going to die alone. I need you to understand that none of those things are true. All of these things are projections of their insecurities, their sense of inadequacy, and their existential dread of being obsolete, because men are not as important as they've been told. And that's the thing that men are starting to realize, whether on a conscious level or a deeply subconscious level, and they're having a very, very hard time reconciling with that. This is why they say, you know, we want to be needed. I need a woman who needs me. They want to feel needed, because if they are not needed, then what purpose do they serve? This is where all of this comes from. And so I think that was everything I wanted to cover. If I forgot something, then I will add it in another video. But these are some of the things, like what I'm talking about today, the degraded Y chromosome and men being a mutation of women, and all of these biological facts about the different sexes that a lot of people don't understand, and helping women recognize when they're being projected onto and when they are being sort of corralled into lowering their standards or extinguishing their own boundaries to give subpar men access to them. These are the things that we talk about in my Selfish Bitch Initiation, which begins next week on Wednesday. So the good girl syndrome, the people pleaser, the overgiver, all of these things are extensions of and natural consequences of the patriarchal inversion that I've been talking about in this video. This, I have to overgive, I have to be the person who pleases, I have to be the person who displays my value through the things that I do, when it's the opposite. Women have inherent value simply by nature of our existence, because we are the creators. It is men, or males, as is reflected all throughout nature, not just in humans, but all throughout nature. It is the males that have to prove their value. It's the males that have to prove their worthiness. It's the males that have to prove that they are deserving of access to the divinity of the female, of the woman, that they are worthy of having their genetics passed along. When a woman is impregnated by a man, when a woman gives birth to a child, she is granting that man immortality through her womb by passing along his genetics, by replicating his genetics. And this is why a lot of men want children. It's not because they want legacy. It's not because they want to be fathers. It's not because they actually care about raising children. It's because it satisfies, at least for a moment, their fear of being obsolete, their fear of being invaluable to the reproductive process. This is why they push so heavily for children in society. It has nothing to do with wanting to build a greater society. It has nothing to do with them wanting to be active fathers, because a lot of them, if not most of them, are not genuinely active fathers who are participating in the parenting of children. It's because by looking at this little kid, it is confirmation for them that they are not wasted genes. That's what that is all about. And these are the things that we break down in the Selfish Bitch Initiation. So if you are a woman who is decentering men from your lives, if you are deconstructing patriarchy, if you are trying to figure out how to set boundaries and how to honor yourself and access the power that lives within you as a woman, this is what the Selfish Bitch Initiation is all about. It's my 21-day program where we're going to be doing 2 calls a week for 3 weeks, where I will help you emerge at the end as a sovereign woman. Going to take you from the people-pleasing, over-giving good girl into the sovereign woman who knows exactly who she is, who speaks with authority, who does not cower to the external projections of the men around her, because she knows who she is, she knows what her value is, and she knows what her power is. So the link to that, if you want to sign up, is in the description box. I'm going to drop it in the comments below. But other than that, I want to hear what you think about this video. What do you think about, what it is that I've shared around the genetics and the biology, the patriarchal history. Have you had experiences on social media where you have seen or been on the receiving end of men's projections? Have you experienced this in your dating life? A lot of women hear this in their relationships with men that they want to leave. You know, men will tell you no one's ever going to love you the way that I did, or no one's ever going to want to be with you because you're a single mother. These are the things that they say to you because they're trying to keep you ensnared so that they can continue to have access to your infinite life force power that comes from your womb. And I'm here to help remove this misunderstanding within your system that allows you to allow men to gain access to you when they don't deserve it and when they don't honor you. So let me know what you think about it in the comments. I want to hear your experiences. I want to hear your perceptions. I want to hear your questions. Do you have any, is there anything that I said in this video that triggered an idea that you maybe want me to expand on? If you want me to talk about it in another video, let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you on the next video.